If you're not listening to the Smoke World podcast, you're wasting your time, you mortal.
What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Smoke World. I'm your host, Stone. So we'll grab that stick, go grab a glass, whatever you're drinking. Let's sit back and have a conversation. You can follow me on Instagram at SmokeWorld50 at Instagram and Gmail. Guess what? Send those emails to Gmail, SmokeWorld50 at gmail.com. I'm happy to have the opportunity to sit here. I'm at Cigar Sessions, sitting down with my brother Jason, who's the brother of the Leaf, who's also a mixologist. So he's going to break down a few things on how to mix and pair those cigars with some of the great drinks. What's up, Jason?
Hey, how we doing, Stone? Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, brother. So, why don't you define what a mixologist is? Now, we hear that term used a lot, but exactly what is that?
All right, Stone. Anytime you want to get real serious about mixing whiskey, sugar, bitters, getting fancy with your cocktails, maybe going a little overboard, being a little, popping your collar. It's like a fancy. It's like a sports car for your drink. You know what I mean? You're accentuating what you already had, but you're trying to do it justice at the same time.
Gotcha.
You don't want to take a fine wine and mix it with soda, for instance. You know what I mean?
Makes sense.
But there are some good whiskeys out there where you throw some bitters, you throw something sweet, you throw liqueur, you throw maybe absinthe, something in there, and it'll add to the drink, and it takes the next level. It opens it up.
Okay, speaking on those terms, okay, now for the regular guy who's or young lady who's out there, smoking a cigar, they're looking to pair, maybe it's a Scotch or whiskey, bourbon, whatever the case may be, something simple, something, let's say, inexpensive, everyday layman smoker. What could you recommend? Okay, that we can use to maybe sprucing up or lighten up the drink, take it to the next level.
Excellent question. So we're here at Cigar Sessions. I came in, I was maybe 5 minutes late. I appreciate it, Stone, you accommodate me. And I came in and I got myself a cigar, and I went and got the Basil Hayden Dark Rye. So I've sold this product. I would go to like Delaware Today, working a table, and I would actually have females say to me, this is a rye whiskey that actually has port added to it. So it's a ready-made cocktail. I'd have females leaving the table going, you could really enjoy this whiskey with a cigar. And that's what as soon as I tasted this whiskey, I said, this totally fits with a cigar. So the Basil Hayden Dark Rye, excellent example. As soon as you brought it up, it's an excellent cigar, ready-made whiskey. You don't have to. It's kind of like a cocktail in a glass because it has the port and it has a really good quality Basil Hayden rye whiskey in there.
Gotcha.
So that's it's ready to rock and roll for the. I don't want to say for the novice. It's just you could grab this bottle, you could grab a cigar, go to somebody's house, and you're going to be a hero. For bringing the whiskey.
Okay. Now, is there anything else, any of those type of whiskeys that you can think of, right off the top of your head, that may fall into that same category, where one can say, you know what, I could go to the store, grab that right off the shelf, pour that, you want to drink it neat, drop an ice cube, whatever the case may be. Is there anything else that you would recommend in that area?
There's a lot of stuff. A lot of people like Grand Marnier cordials and whatnot, because they want to dip their cigar, they want to dip the tip a little bit, and they want to enjoy that.
That's a violation, but I'm not going to say nothing.
Oh, is that okay? Well, you might know.
No, I'm just saying, that's just me. I'm just teasing.
No, there might, and you're the cigar guy. Hey, man, I'm here to learn from you too, because Grand Marnier, and it depends. A more full-bodied cigar, you want probably a higher test whiskey. So like a steak. Like a steak, you want Cabernet wine to help, the acidity in the steak and the acidity in the wine. It melds well together. So I would say if you're going to get like a full-bodied Maduro cigar, you might want to go with more of a high-test alcohol. So that's where you go with like a single barrel. When you talk about single barrel whiskeys, Single barrel means that they haven't added any water to that. So they take they take a barrel of whiskey. You're getting that uncut. So Knob Creek Single Barrel, for instance, they don't add any water to that. All these other whiskeys that you taste, they're adding a lot of water to that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But sometimes they add the water there to bring that the alcohol content down. So I would think, and you're probably more the cigar guy than me. I'm more the liquor guy, the food guy. But a more high-bodied alcohol would meet better with a more high-bodied cigar, I would think.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. Now, scotches. Then I'm going to ask you, because I had this question. Actually, my sister posed this question. What was the difference between a scotch and a whiskey?
Yes, sir. All right, so this is definitely my forte. I'm a huge bourbon guy. For something to be bourbon, it has to be made in the United States. Now, your grandfather's going to yell at you and say, it has to be made in Kentucky. Don't scold your grandfather.
Right.
Say, all right, Grandpa. But the truth is, it just has to be made in the United States. For something to be Scotch, it has to be made in Scotland. For something to be Irish whiskey, it has to be made in Ireland. For something to be made in tequila, it has to be made in Mexico. There's all these stipulations. For something to be champagne, it has to be made in Champagne, France.
Gotcha.
So there's all these little stipulations.
Okay.
Now, bourbon has to be 51% corn. Scotch has a million different stipulations. What I would say about Scotch, what you really get, there's a lot of fire and earth in Scotch. Now we're talking single malt scotches. There's all these different stipulations and different regulations for what has to be single malt scotch, what has to be a blended scotch. But a single malt scotch, the way that I would describe it is kind of like a full-bred dog. Single malt scotch is made from 1 grain malted barley. That's all it's made from, single malt scotch. Now, blended scotch can have a lot of different components in there.
Okay, gotcha.
As far as the mash bill is concerned. So if you want to look at the mash bill for bourbon, it has to be 51% corn.
Okay.
They have to use malted barley, which they use malted barley in Scotch. They have to use rye, wheat, and what did we say? We said bourbon was corn, malted barley, and either rye or wheat. And then Scotch can be all those different components if it's a blended Scotch, but if it's single malt Scotch, there's a bunch of different stipulations and specifications with it.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of it.
There's
a lot with it, man. It really is. Like, you can make a whiskey in the United States 100% corn. It's all made out of corn.
Okay.
You can, but you can't make. I mean, there's no Scotch made out of 100% corn, for instance. But
it sounds complex. Sounds a lot of, I guess I say chemistry to this, but I guess
no, it is chemistry.
Yeah, a lot of
yes, sir,
chemistry.
it is chemistry. And if you look at like Japanese whiskey, for instance, right? So my old job, I was a liquor distributor. If you look at a Japanese whiskey distillery, it looks like some kind of science lab, man. It is so
what
cool.
Are they using? Now,
they use all these stills and stuff like that, but it looks insanely clean. Like, I look at it looks like something, it looks so immaculate. You ever see Breaking Bad? Okay, so Breaking Bad when they're like mixing the chemicals, like what was it, season 4 or whatever, he's mixing the chemicals. He's like, I want you guys to clean all this stuff. Okay, so the one, we're jumping into Breaking Bad, the guy's mixing chemicals to make meth. And they kidnap this guy. They take him down to Mexico to make meth. And the first thing he tells everybody is clean all the equipment, because he's a chemist. Well, if you're a liquor guy, you're a chemist too.
Gotcha.
It's the same thing. It's chemical reactions.
Right, makes sense.
And it's are your instruments clean, and are your products clean, because it will produce the best results.
This may be an obvious question. You say Japanese whiskey, obviously that got to be made in Japan, as Scotch is made in Scotland.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that now let's talk to the novice now. The novice that may be a a cigar smoker, but maybe not adamant drinker. Maybe they're getting just introduced to the the liquors, the browns, and some of the whites. Would there be a scotch that you would recommend because it's all types of peaty scotch and that's smoky, and I'm not a fan of that. That's like they burnt the building down and they caught the fire and put it right in the bottle.
So you don't
That's not my thing.
You don't like the peat.
No, I'm not a peat
You don't
guy.
like the peat, which is perfectly fine. Maybe one day, if we were hanging out a lot, Stone,
Right.
I would be like trying to get you onto that peat a little bit. Like I would introduce you to it.
Right.
But I totally understand that you don't like the peat, man. You would probably like something with a sherry cask.
Okay.
More so, a smoother scotch.
Yeah. that
You
peat,
want a
you put a
smooth.
little water in it, like try to open it up a little bit. But
Yeah.
it's still got that smoke.
You don't want a big Band-Aid lit on fire.
Right, there
you
you
don't
go.
want a big Band-Aid lit on fire. So, what I would suggest, and I really love this cigar bar that we're at, Ashton's in Philadelphia. Me and my boys, we go up there. Somebody's, bachelor party, birthday party, whatever. You go up there, you see famous people. I remember I went up there. I was drinking this Japanese whiskey. It's called Toki. It's a blended. It drinks a lot like a Scotch. The Japanese mostly modeled their whiskeys off of Scotch.
Okay.
So they drink a lot like Scotch, real clean Scotch. And I'm drinking this Toki with my boy, and the girl suggested the waitress, very good with her cigar knowledge, and she paired it. I said, I'm drinking the Toki. She gave me more of a medium to light bodied cigar, and I'm drinking this clean Scotch on the rocks, just like I'm drinking now, but I'm drinking bourbon. And it was really awesome, man. The Toki,
Okay.
It was really good with a medium-bodied cigar.
Gotcha.
But I'm the novice as far as the cigars go. I just love smoking sticks. I'm the guy who brings cigars to the wedding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we can all get a picture of us all but I
Yes.
enjoy them. But I would definitely say that Toki, when I was up in Ashton's, up in Philly with my boys at a bachelor party, not insanely expensive, medium-bodied cigar. And I gave my buddy a sip, and he was like, this is like the best whiskey I had. And I think it might have had to do something with the pairing of it because, it's like a $40 bottle in the liquor store.
Okay, so
But
it's not too bad.
it's not going to kill you.
Right, not
and
too
it's
bad.
and it's cool because, you take somebody, they're a whiskey guy, you bring them over a Japanese whiskey, they have that as part of their collection, and you can Google or look up the tasting notes and then pair it with a cigar right before you go there. Now you're like their hero,
Gotcha. Okay, now you mentioned bitters. I guess we'll start talking about cocktails. Now, I'm not going to say exactly what are bitters. I'm not going to, maybe you could define that, but
Absolutely.
we hear these terms. I know I personally hear, I don't have any bitters at home, but I know there are many drinks, like the old-fashioned, that I'm familiar with that drink that has bitters.
Yeah.
But exactly what are bitters really? Where did that come from? What is that? What can you tell the listeners about bitters?
Are you looking for a new platform to connect with other cigar smokers, consumers, lounges, and brands while escaping tobacco-related rules of other social media platforms? Then look no further. Stogie Lives, the new social media platform for cigar lovers created by a female. So come join Stogie Lives, STOGIELIVES.com, where every cigar lover has a place to connect.
So, not to get super deep into it, but alcohol was medicine for, 10,000 years. Alcohol was like a medicine. It furthered exploration. It furthered all kinds of medicine. Like back in the Civil War, people crossing the Atlantic and stuff like that. You're going to chop somebody's leg off. They got shot.
Right.
Well, we're going to chop your leg off. Well, you can drink some whiskey real quick before we chop your leg off with a
Take a
dirty
shot of it.
saw. With a dirty saw.
So those Western movies are true.
Yeah.
What you see in those Western movies, they
But it was, but like what I mean, like alcohol was medicine. Like you had an infection, you could pour alcohol on the infection to kill the infection and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So bitters were kind of like this medicinal property. They took alcohol, they threw a bunch of herbs in there, and that was this element. It became, and I'm actually going to share. After this meeting, I'm going to share some of the videos that I found discussing the Sazerac cocktail, which you and I mentioned before, Stone. It was kind of like the spice to a cocktail. it was the spice to a cocktail back in the day, which I really like the description. But it did have some medicinal qualities because, like, I don't know if you ever worked in a bar or not, Stone, but, like, there would be, like, people coming with hiccups. Mm-hmm. So you give them, like, ginger ale and some bitters. Well, that was, like, a background medicinal thing. Like, people had, like, voodoo, like, witchcraft type. Like, they didn't, like, oh, you were sick or whatever, I'll give my kids some bitters and, like, maybe, send them to school. You know what I mean? Like, you know how they rub liquor on people's gums, on the kids' gums and stuff? It was that type of mentality. But bitters, there were Angostura bitters. Those are the ones you can buy at the liquor store. They're the ones that go into Manhattan and stuff. They're a very sharp bitter. But there's a lot of cool bitters that came out, like chocolate bitters, cocoa bitters, orange bitters, Peychaud bitters, which are in the Angostura, which are in the Sazerac cocktail, which we're going to talk about. So
many different types of bitters.
There's a lot of different types of bitters, but bitters are, if you want to make rules for a cocktail, there's your hard element. There's your whiskey or your sweet, your gin, whiskey, tequila. Then you got your sweet element, which might be a vermouth or a simple syrup or some kind of sweet element. Then you have your bitters. So there's 3 elements.
Okay.
Those are like the basic rules.
That's what I was thinking. Like I said, because it seemed there are, I guess, so many liquors, but it can be the same way with bitters now. There's so many different varieties of bitters. Are there any recommendations to say, you know what, if you're just getting started with, like me, because I'm not that familiar with bitters, to say, okay, you know what, Stone, just grab, this one and that one, kind of get you started?
Excellent question. Angostura bitters are the ones that you can grab at the grocery store. There's a lot of uses for them, but that's a very strong bitter. And then I would say orange bitters.
Okay.
Orange bitters are what I use in my cocktails, in my old fashions. And then you would probably build on that. So after those 2, you could make your Manhattans and your old fashions and other cocktails with those 2 bitters. But there's chocolate, like I said. There's cardamom bitters. There's it's St. Patty's Day. You want to use mint bitters. You know what I mean? So Conor McGregor, I sold his whiskey. I was like, we should make an old-fashioned, we call it an Irish old-fashioned, do 2 ounces. Conor McGregor's proper 12 whiskey. Okay. We would have used orange bitters for Irish orange or whatever, use the mint bitters, and do like some kind of cool simple syrup. And we would have stirred it, poured it over like a big king cube, gave it like an orange garnish, something like that. But that's like, you call it a knockout or something like that. That's a good idea for a cocktail, like that type of direction.
All right, so now going into that, do you have a favorite? Now, I'm an old-fashioned fan. Before we end, you're going to give us the ingredients to that for folks may be listening that really might not know the ingredients for the old-fashioned. But is there a go-to drink for you that you like to me? And how long? I'm going to ask you this question because we are talking about smoke world. How long have you been smoking cigars?
You'd say 10 years.
Okay, got it.
I mean, you'd probably say 20 years, but like, I've been going to cigar bars for 10 years.
Okay. So mostly you're a brown guy. You're drinking tonight. You're drinking brown.
I drink mostly brown. I drink mostly bourbon and tequila. It keeps me honest. Me and Irish whiskey broke up. It was a good. When you're too much alike,
we ain't right get along too good.
Yeah, Irish whiskey are good. We're good to stay apart. But my bourbon and my tequila, I really like. I like Scotch for weddings. Bourbon is more like me. I'm more like an American guy. Like bourbon, you take on a camping trip, and I think Scotch, you buy your buddy a bottle of Blue Label because he got a promotion. If that makes any sense. If that makes any sense. And
now we're gonna touch on wines a little bit.
All right.
Let's move to the wine arena. Again, like I said, I guess it's all personal, preference on what one likes as far as white wine, red wine. Now, as a mixologist, in your professional opinion, would you recommend a white wine with the cigar? I guess it's going to vary, but I'm going to ask this question because it's very open. A white wine or a red wine? I'm a red wine. Okay, I'm a red wine fan myself, personally.
Red wine, big time.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of wines that are going to have bourbon barrel, like casks where they put like a red wine, a lot more red wine they're going to put in a wood cask. You want that wood finish.
Gotcha.
I mean, okay, we'll go into white in a second, but I would say Cabernets, you want spicy stuff. You want stuff that's going to hold up to this smoke. If you have faint wines, they're not going to hold up to the cigar smoke, I believe. So I would say more Cabernets,
Okay.
Zinfandels. Look for stuff that has like Mondavi, Cabernet, bourbon barrel cask. There's a lot of stuff that they put in wood that's
That gives it flavor.
think stuff that they pair with meat, with red meat. I think that's what I would say with cigars, and that's my medium experience with cigars. You're talking to a whiskey liquor restaurant guy who likes to smoke cigars.
Gotcha.
Now
Now we're going to touch, lightly on the, I guess, a drink that you kind of take kind to, tequila.
Tequila. Yes,
Now,
sir.
again, there's a variety of tequilas out there, from cheap to expensive. Do you think there is a difference besides price and the quality of those tequilas based on price? So let's say you got a $15 bottle of tequila opposed to an $80 bottle of tequila. Do you think there's a really big difference in that? And I asked that question because some people say, okay, what's the difference? And I heard somebody answer saying, well, if you don't know the difference, get the cheaper one because it's not going to, your palate has to develop to the point where you know the difference. But what is your opinion on that?
So with tequila, if it has to say on the bottle 100% agave for it to be tequila, true tequila. So if you look at a bottle of Patron, everybody's drank Patron. I've sold 1 million bottles of Patron. Love Patron. It says 100% of agave on there. Jose Cuervo, they have some really great products. Jose Cuervo, the regular tequila is not technically tequila. It is a mixto. I could potentially get in trouble for saying that, but it is a mixto. It's a mixto tequila. Now, what would I do? Have I taken shots of Jose Cuervo? Absolutely. I'm a red-blooded American. That being said, that's for making margaritas and stuff like that. If your tequila says 100% agave, that's where you start with. So if people don't want to drink 100% agave tequila, if it's not represented on the bottle that way, then you're not really pairing it with cigars as much per se. Like real cigars, maybe they'd be smoking like, I don't know, throw out a fake cigar, man. Like, I don't. Yeah.
Cajitas, a lot of cajitas become fake cajitas. A lot of folks don't realize that. Like, I guess the tequila scenario.
Well, I'm more talking like.
So
I'm talking cigars where I go to my cigar bar in Wilmington and I'd smoke a certain brand and they were like scoffing at me. And I was like, guys, it's my third cigar.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay, something on the lower end.
Like that's where the mixto tequilas are. Gotcha. They're the ones that aren't.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
So as far as tequila goes, there's Blanco. They call it Blanco, Silver, or Plata. And I think you and I talked about this, but that's entry-level tequila. Then there's Reposado is the next level. Reposado gets aged. It depends on the company, but it aged for like a minimum of 90 days in wood oak barrels. Then you have Añejo tequila. That would be the one that would probably be most best paired with cigars, the Añejo, because that's the one that's been in the wood the longest. So that's the brownest tequila. That's the stuff that's been in the wood the longest.
Okay.
So that's where I would go as far as the tequila. Tequila has all kinds of fun cocktails as well. Gotcha. Like you could do a variation of an old fashioned with tequila and smoke a cigar and really enjoy that too. Yeah.
All right, we're going to touch briefly on beers.
Okay.
Then you got the IPAs and all. I mean, that's like a whole nother market in itself. That's like the cigar business. There's so many different IPAs out there. But personally, me, I'm not a big fan of drinking a beer. I'm not a big beer fan, but beer and cigars, I'm not saying they don't match for me. But, the game has changed. And again, that's my personal opinion. So you have these IPAs Now, exactly what is IPA? Because we hear these terms, IPAs. I think some of the people really don't know what they are.
I haven't been selling beer lately, but I do know about IPAs. I was an IPA guy for a long time. India Pale Ale. So the Brits, they conquered the world, So what they did was they had to put so much hops in the beer. Hops is a preservative. And actually, if you look at hops, it looks a lot like weed.
Okay.
If you look at hops, it's like a variation of weed, the weed strain.
Right.
And some people, they're allergic to hops. The same people who are some people are allergic to weed, they're allergic to hops too. It's a weird thing that I found out. But anyway, hops, they would throw all these hops in the beer because the Brits had to get their booze around the Cape of New Hope, which is Africa, right, around the bottom. So they threw all these hops in there. So it went from England and it traveled around the Cape of New Hope. They had to throw all these hops in as preservative to get it to India. That's the reason why India loves freaking Scotch. That's why India is so into Scotch, because the Brits were taking all their beer and their Scotch, they took it around the Cape of New Hope, around Africa, and they took it to India, and that's why the Indians love Scotch. I don't know, the beer never really translated as much, but that style of beer, the India Pale Ale, this super hoppy beer, that's what it became. Then it came to the United States, and the United States actually has been awesome as far as innovators in this whole craft beer thing.
Okay.
So they got all this hoppy beer in there. The thing about hoppy beer, it's like really good with spicy food and stuff like that.
Okay.
As far as I've been told, like a Sierra Nevada is real good with like chicken wings, like hot chicken wings.
Gotcha.
So I would say a cigar that has a lot of character, like some spicy notes or something like really festive, I would say do that with these high alcohol, innovative beers. I mean, these IPAs, they're wild though, man. They'll put like, they got like, yeah, and it's too much, actually.
That's what I was saying.
It's actually what I would say is a lot of stouts, like a Guinness in a cigar, an Irish beer Guinness, like that well-rounded, with like a medium body, the heavy cigar with a Guinness. With the hoppy stuff, I would say get a unique cigar, man, like a funky cigar.
Okay.
Like something where like...
Abstract, basically.
Abstract and like you're doing something on it, like golfing maybe. I don't know, like
something different.
Something different, like the beginning cigar of the night. If you want to do like a real crazy hoppy cigar.
Okay. Now we're gonna get into some of your mixologies. We're gonna have you share, some of your ingredients with the audience on how to concoct some of these drinks. Again, I'm a fan of the old fashioned, and there may be some spins on it. You can give your spin, but
yeah, absolutely.
Folks, you're about to get a lesson here on how to make an old-fashioned. If you didn't know, you have to Google it right now. You're on Smoke World, and Jason's going to share how to make that old-fashioned.
And actually, Stone, I'm going to give you a few videos from this one guy that I like from the Ritz-Carlton. The older videos that I found after you reached out to me. I'm going to share a few videos, which Stone will be able to share with you guys as well. So, basically, the old-fashioned, this is the way you want to start it. You want to I would say get like a 16-ounce pint glass. The glass you would drink with. You might have this at your house. If you have a shaker tin, that would work as well. You want to use simple syrup or a sugar cube. Now, simple syrup is equal parts sugar and water. So say you've got a whole coffee cup full of sugar. You dump that into a pan. You take a whole coffee cup full of water, dump that in the pan too. Get that to a rolling boil. Stir it the whole time. That's going to dilute the sugar. I like using sugar in the raw, like a brown sugar. You can get this at like Mexican food markets. You can go to the grocery store. It's called Demerara sugar, Terminado sugar, but this is sugar in the raw. I like using that a little bit better. So you get that to a rolling boil, you let it cool. Portion that off, put it in a squeeze bottle, or put it in like some kind of container you can pour out of. So you got your simple syrup. You got your container. Throw some bitters in there. We talked about chocolate bitters. We talked about orange bitters. We talked about Angostura bitters. I like to use orange bitters. They're not as strong as Angostura, but if all you have is Angostura, let's go with those. Throw some Angostura in there. use a 1/4 ounce of that simple syrup. So that's about a teaspoon of it. Now, you can peel an orange. Don't use the fruit of the orange. Just take the orange peel. Throw that in there. Take a muddler. A muddler could be like, there's professional muddlers. It's like a wooden handled stick. But you could use like the back end of any instrument you have in your kitchen and just press that orange peel, bitters, and that sugar water or that sugar cube down at the bottom of the glass. Press that a bunch of times till it's all murky and watered down. Then take 2 ounces of your favorite bourbon. I'm a big Maker's Mark guy, so I'm going to take 2 ounces of Maker's Mark. I'm going to dump it in it. 2 ounces of Maker's Mark is like probably about 3 tablespoons of liquor if you don't have a measuring component. So you've got that all in there. You put your ice in. Now you can stir that. Stir it with a long spoon if you have a long spoon. There's really fancy bartending spoons as well. You stir that for about 16 seconds. You do not want to shake this cocktail. You don't want to dilute the drink. Shaking drinks, we all remember James Bond. James Bond would put the shaker tin on top and shake the hell out of it. That's awesome for certain drinks, but that's not what we're making right now. So we stir this drink. Then we put a Hawthorne strainer or some kind of strainer on top of it. We strain this drink onto new ice into a either old-fashioned glass or rocks glass. Now what you do is you take your spoon and you fish that orange peel out of there, or you make a whole new orange peel and you put that drink in the glass. Some people like a cherry. You can add a cherry right now as well. And that's an old-fashioned.
Nice. All right, then, brother. Well, like I said, folks, you heard it here. I gave you one of the secret ingredients. Is there any other drink that you may that you can think of that you may want to share that may pair well with the cigar? This happen to be one of my go-tos, the old-fashioned. But maybe you can share one of your particular specialties that you cater to. Is there anything that you'd like to share with the folks?
Honestly, and you brought it up. I used to make, and it's a variation of an old-fashioned. It's a rum old-fashioned. So you got to get a high-scale rum to do this. So I would use Ron Zacapa, or Little Wayne has this new rum. It's called Bamboo. It's phenomenal. It's almost like a dessert rum. It's so sweet. But I don't know. I think those two are a great. Presidente is another good rum. So what I did was I made a banana simple syrup. So if you look at my old-fashioned, we talked about whiskey, bitters, and Demerara, or a good sugar simple syrup. What I did was I made a banana simple syrup. So I pureed all these bananas. I threw a bunch of the same amount of simple syrup to the bananas, and I let that sit for a while. So it was all pureed with sugar added to it. I strained that, and it produced the juice. So basically, it was the rum, a 1/4 ounce of a banana simple syrup, and I used apple bitters. So I found apple bitters. Whatever, they were like online. You can find apple bitters out there. They're high end. It's probably like $20 for a set of bitters. But what I did was you take like a mixing glass, put ice in there, 2 ounces of a high end rum. The Bamboo or what have you, do the banana simple syrup, a 1/4 ounce, do the apple bitters, a few stirs, stir that, and you would strain it on top of a king cube. And if you want to be real fancy, you'd have like some kind of banana that you maybe like hit with a torch, and you could garnish it, or an apple, like apple slices you could put in there. I sold the hell out of that drink, man. It was something that I thought it was original for me. Because it was original for me.
Do you have a name for it? Is this something that you created? So it's a creation you made.
It was something that these guys, these old dudes who played pool for me, they would come. There was these dads who came in, and it was. You could call it a Ron Zacapa old fashioned, man. Honestly, and I don't sell that product right now. It's my competitor, but I really did well with that. Like it was a really good, innovative cocktail, which I haven't thought about it since you brought it up to me tonight.
Well, since you mentioned that, sir, you know what I mean? Now, we are at Cigar Sessions here in Middletown, Delaware. Is that something maybe you want to share with the bartenders? Or that's maybe you going to keep that close to the vest?
That's a good question. So you would have to get the bartenders to commit to that banana simple syrup that I made. So maybe a good compromise would be, there's a lot of really good products out there like banana liqueurs.
Okay.
So I might say, if I couldn't convince them to make this, because that's a passion project to make this banana simple syrup, man. Like, so I would maybe suggest, say, use a really high-end rum, get this really cool. It's called Dillard's liqueur, banana liqueur, and then use the apple bitters. But if I was like awesome with one of the bartenders, I'm getting to know the bartenders here. That would be a heavy commitment for them to make that simple syrup. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, no problem.
That would be awesome for you to make. You got your friends coming over or your wife or whatever. You make that simple syrup, it would be awesome. But it is a commitment to make that simple syrup because it does expire.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, before we leave here, is there anything that you might want to share with them? Is there any place we can find you? Do you have any social media presence that folks maybe can look you up and say, hey, you know what, Jason? I heard you on Smoke World. You sound you know what you're talking about. I got a question for you. Is there Facebook, Instagram, or anything like that? Twitter?
Well, right now, Stone, I think I am going to be finding a home at Cafe Gelato in Newark, Delaware. Might be taking a management role on there. I have previously worked with them for the past 5 years with their catering department, and I have worked with the owner, Ryan German, as a consultant. We did a huge Pappy Van Winkle dinner there. We did a Justin Wine dinner there over the summer. So I would say go to Cafe Gelato, and I will be launching a YouTube page fairly soon, so I will let you know about that stuff.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Folks, you heard it first. Jason, who's the mixologist, tell you how to make all your drinks, what to pair with your cigars. Again, appreciate you listening. Again, you can follow me on Instagram at SmokeWorld50, and I tell you this every time, people. Send those emails into SmokeWorld50@gmail.com. Well, Jason, look, I appreciate you being a guest on Smoke World, brother. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the education. And, folks, we will check you out on the other side. Take care. Peace.